going to go up and we got a hotel room and stay the night and watch the play soccer. Finishes college in New York. It's a good trip. We're going to stay all night.
I had new gutters put on.
No, and
They had the gutter guards put on.
that's families from Buffalo.
I'm loving this trouble we're going to
Thank
do.
you. So we're going to go up and spend time with Ruth and that family up there too and stuff. I need it. I'm sorry. Keep praying. Keep praying. Maybe I'm going to be gone for a couple of days.
I took
Huh? I know. Oh, yeah. So today I can yell and scream at the soccer field. For the team. I know.
Hi, Tom.
There you go. I give Bella too.
We're on our Zoom meeting. It's a face sharing meeting. And this wonderful lady, I mean, I call us the living dead. You know, because some of us are, I mean, I'm almost young. She never returned her phone or her answering machine. So get her sister giving us her grocery list.
Oh no.
Her brother-in-law to pick up for them. Really don't you understand? We can't even talk to each other because now all we're hearing is we're all the noise is coming out of the list.
Some dark, some light.
Zoom meeting. I tried.
It makes it fun to see here.
Somebody sitting there.
Find an empty seat here.
Yeah. This time, yeah.
But I don't oh, maybe that's what
We need name tags. I'm spouting.
Judy.
Oh, is your sighting on that?
Yes, right today at 6.
So you're free and ready to go. What's next?
Well, they got to come in on Thursday and check the windows because I get moisture in between them.
Oh.
So,
But they're new too, aren't they? That's what I thought.
oh yeah, it is.
Wow.
Let's find them. That's next. Get it all done. I'll get it all I haven't made it all
Which one?
Both of them.
Good.
Home for a while or how long?
Well, we leave tomorrow morning for Buffalo. But it's just an overnight. Megan's playing soccer.
A few more cars pulling in, but we're gonna get started. Just a minute here. somebody wave people into this door over here from there we're walking? It'd be a shorter trip to the closest chairs. Cathcart and some others.
Close the door.
I didn't say it. So let's begin with a prayer, and then we'll introduce some people. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us this evening. We thank you for the beautiful rainbow that was out there just a little bit ago, for the beauty of the fall leaves and the smell of the crispness of the air. And we thank you for all the people who have founded and built this place over the last 160 plus years, and for all they've entrusted to us. Help us, we pray, look forward to the future generations will need from this church community and all of its facilities that support its ministries. We thank you for the hard work of our co-chairs, Marty and Pat, and the committee members who've looked at the physical structure and needs of our parish and the ministries. And thank you too for the generosity that so many people have made it possible through the years to sustain the ministries. And we ask all of us to intercede for Mary as we pray. Hail Mary. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. There's still plenty of seats over on this end, so feel free to move across. I'd like to introduce Pat Weimer, work with Marty, and they've headed up our steering committee.
Thanks, Father. First of all, I got an announcement to make. If you're here to see the model of the church or the model of the remodeled church, you're at the wrong meeting. We are nowhere close to making a decision. I think you'll hear that guy, Rick, say that about another 5 times. But let me tell you what we've been charged with, right? We've just been charged to assess the facilities. We started this, if you remember, back in pre-COVID. I don't know if you remember those days. They did exist. And we started, to be honest with you, we started to brand. It was a wish list. It was everything you'd want underneath the sun. And we came back and said, how do we do this a little bit more specific? And thank God we got Rick Ziska to help us, because it really put us more in focus. So we started about in April or May, right guys? I think that's when we started really looking at this, is about April or May of this year. And we met like every other week. And we really put a lot into it. And I'll tell you, I'm not, for those of you who know me, I'm not a detailed guy. We got detailed. Like, I was like, I'm done, and it would be like another 20, 30 questions would still ask. So we've looked at this every way to Sunday. A couple things we wanted to look at is, what are the opportunities of the facilities that we have, and then what are the limitations? What are the limitations that is going to hold us back, not for the next 10 years, not for the next 20 years, the next 50 years, right? And do we want to get back in front of you another 10 years from now to have the same meeting all over again? So what's sustainable? What can we do that's sustainable for the long term for this church? Second is, how do we engage? How do we engage in worship? How do we engage our parish in ministry? How do we engage our parish in just the everyday life of administrative? And we put all that together to see, what does this all look like? How's this all assessed? And then finally, we thought, how do we gauge the community at large? I know there's just a few people from this thing called St. Vincent de Paul in the room. And we looked at that too and said, you know, we have a responsibility to our community at large, and how are we taking care of them? So we've been blessed to have Rick Ziska here, because he's really kept us focused. He asked questions I never thought I was thinking of asking. And I think we have a product for you that at least lets you see this is where our facilities stand, and this is what we're asked to do. So I would tell you that we are being streamed, right, and we're being recorded. So at some point you have cards in front of you. If you raise your hand, I'm not the fastest, I'm sorry, but I will try to race to you as fast as I possibly can, and I will get out the microphone in front of you, and please wait for that so that we can have it recorded. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rick.
Great, thank you, Pat. Was this on? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. My name is Rick Ziska. I'm with Ziska Architecture. Some of you may know the name because my father designed the building that we're in now. But if you ask me what the meaning of the pattern in this floor is, I will not be able to tell you. It was an interesting drive coming down from east side of Cleveland. 271 is such a beautiful drive down. It's hilly and windy. And you got that crazy fall sky, and that sun is hitting right at that point where you can't put the visor down because it gets right between the visor and the rear view mirror. And then I turn on to 18, and I get this beautiful sun blasting in my face as it's pouring rain. Just as I'm pulling in off of 18, there's got to be a rainbow here. So of course, it stops raining as soon as I pull on the site. And I look behind, and there's this double rainbow behind me. So I think we're blessed for it tonight. First thing I want to do is I want to thank the committee that's put in a lot of work. There's several of them in the house today. Tom's are here, Marty, Jen's here. Of course, Pat, they've done a wonderful job. I'm very proud. They really shepherded this process through. Again, with Ziska Architecture, we kind of take a ministry of doing religious work. It's a big niche of our firm. You can see that it's not only Catholic churches, but it runs the gamut of a lot of different Christian-based faiths. But we've done about a dozen brand new churches. We've done close to 200 church-related projects. A lot of them for the diocese, some of them master plans that were instituted. We've done parish halls, gymnasiums, administration, really run the gamut of working through. One thing that we did that you all might know is down here at the United Methodist Church in Medina on Foot Road. We did that back on 2009, 2010. And working with religious groups is very unique. It's a different building type than a lot of different buildings that we design. And there's what we've learned is that we need a lot of patience and humility in working with these church groups. Why is that? Well, we're working on buildings and making decisions about buildings that you might have been baptized in, you may have baptized your kids. There's marriages that's taken place in the families here. Your kids may have gone to school here. You may have buried someone out of this, the loved ones. And lastly, there's plenty of you who have helped build this church. Blood, sweat, and tears. And we want to honor and respect that. And so we've developed this kind of overarching concept that guides us through this whole process. It's building church while building buildings. And you see, church is capital C. It's not necessarily about the bricks and mortar. It's about bringing the entire parish community together to build something great for the future. One thing that we promise is to honor all ideas. Architects say, yeah, we listen to our clients, like politicians, right? Yeah, thank you for giving me that idea, and then it goes right in the trash. Honoring all ideas is an active form of listening. And so whenever we hear from anybody in the parish, any ideas come across, we take it back in the committee. Maybe some crazy ideas that you never know, but we promise to take it back into committee and address everything that comes in front of us. And the next time you see me in the next town hall meeting, I will show you all the comments that we received and how we address those, or how we probably couldn't address some of those, but we want to make sure that everyone is heard. Last thing we want to do at the end of the day is take a vote on a master plan. Say, okay, how many yeses for this one and how many no's for that? That's not what we're about, because at the end of the day, one group is going to be a loser, and that's not what we do as a community. So we developed this process that we started back in April, laid out kind of a fact-finding mission. How do we come up with the needs of the parish? So we decided that first thing we got to do is look at the existing facility, see its condition, look at the system, see how they are, if they've been getting used. I'll have a slide on that a little bit later. We looked at hard data. We started with the U.S. Census from 2010 to 2020, and then we looked at parish demographics from 2010 to 2022. And then we met with ministries. We wanted to get ministry input as much as we could. And then we wanted to look at what are other parishes doing, what similar size of us, what are they doing on their campus? And then we look through all that and we kind of get the results of what the parish needs. Not what we're going to provide, but it gives us a roadmap to what you need. I want to reiterate, no decisions have been made. I have not started designing anything. This was only fact-finding mission. The last piece of this puzzle is you. We're engaging the parish to get their input before we start to put pen to paper. And so I mentioned, we started with the existing facility, and we concentrated on the church basement, and the rectory. We had Osborne Engineering do the assessments of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, and their report, which is available to us, says there's about $300,000 in needs of repairs or replacements. Now, that's not a, Father, write a check for $300,000, we're going to do this right now. This is a 5 to 10 year plan. Because you've got new boilers, so those are fine, but you've got radiators, they're still existing radiators from 1960s. You've got rooftop units there that have a shelf life about 10 to 15 years before they have to be replaced. Lighting, we have beautiful fluorescent lighting, but we've got much better technology. We talk about sustainability items as well. And then this next part of the presentation is kind of to open everyone's eyes, because not everyone knows what's behind all the doors. So, see, when you go to the church, you don't see all the issues that are being faced on a daily problem. And one thing that I concentrate on, in terms of master planning and design, is hospitality. When you come onto a site, what's the first thing you need? What's the first thing you see? Is it easy to park? Is it easy to find where you're going? We want to be very welcoming from the very beginning of being in a car. So I remember the first time I came here to go meet with Father. I'm like, where do I go? Right? I mean, it's very clear. You got to see a sign over here, and then walk down this and see a sign there. It's not very hospitable. And one other issue is that you come in on one side, and you might not know, once you get beyond the lobby, that you have to go down the stairs to a couple offices and a toilet, and then the other offices are up the stairs with another toilet. There's no toilet on the ground floor. And that second floor is actually the beginning of the priest's residence. So we're starting to intermingle between offices and the priest's residence. And the church, very familiar with the church, and again, going up, that's your main entry, for visitors, and for everyone else coming up and having to navigate those stairs. You have it wasn't unusual that the church was designed in the way it was. You see a lot of Catholic churches where it's facing a main street, but now all the parking is in the back. So all these gathering rooms are pretty much useless. Not the fact that it's also very small. Again, we also have stairs. And the length of the church is also of concern. I mean, it was originally designed as 33 rows, but some rows were taken back. But you're 28 to 38 rows back from the altar. It's hard to see, it's hard to hear, it's hard to feel a part of what's going on. In the church basement, again, it's a typical 1960s basement. It worked really well for some things. It's being used for school lunches. Difficult to use it for much more, in terms of gathering because of all the columns. It keeps you from seeing everything and being part of everything. Obviously, bathrooms are outdated, kitchen is outdated, and again, your entry is right there. So even if you had gatherings, how do you know where to go? And the rectory. You can see from these pictures, it's a bit dated. I mean, you look at those old.
They're original. Those are original. They're electric.
But so this begins the second floor. And there's a third floor with the bedroom suite. But the second floor of the residence, you can see all the O's are offices. Well, that's the kitchen. That's their living and dining room. So when the priest is coming down to have a cup of coffee in the morning, someone could be going to work. Not something I think is very favorable. And then another problem is, see all those red boxes? Those are all the stairs within the building. I mean, you gotta go down the stairs to a room and then go back up the stairs. It's crazy. I'm not sure the thought process between having all those stairs, but I mean, I just think about either the workers or the priests if, they sprain their ankle. I mean, you're climbing upstairs all the time, up and down stairs, not very safe. And storage. I mean, every parish, everything screams storage, storage, storage. Well, all these orange places, all across the campus, are storing different things. You've got the bottom of the Randall House, that is the St. Vincent de Paul, but they've also got, let's see, in here is another St. Vincent de Paul. So they're going back and forth with their food. You've got one of these which has school drama supplies. And these are in sheds. They're not temperature regulated or anything. You've got mice in there. You've got, again, you've got school stuff, you've got stuff everywhere. It's very difficult to manage. Next thing we did was we looked at demographics. We looked at the U.S. Census from 2010 to 2020. And you can see it's about a 5% increase. The city of Medina is going down a little bit, but all the townships are growing. And from the diocese, the 8 county diocese, we know that 22% of the population is Catholic. So when we come down and we look at the number of parishioners that we had in 2020, that would represent about 6% of the residents of Medina, Greater Medina. So we have 16%. Where are those other 16% going? Are they going to other parishes? And if they are, why are they doing that? Or some of them just gave up on religion? We don't know, but there's potential growth in that 16%. And we did, this is a truncated version of this form. There's a lot of numbers that we went through, starting from 2012, 2022. We kind of negate 2020 because COVID. 2021, we're just starting to see things coming back to normal. But you can see that there is a steady increase in number of parishioners. And number of parishioners, it's actual people. So that's school-age kids, mom and dad. But we track the households here. So for families coming to church. And again, it's a steady increase. Interesting thing is, though, mass attendance was going down. And that's what we're concerned about, is getting people back to church. Now, we can't say all of it is because of COVID, because it was happening before COVID. And we don't know how much it's going to rebound after COVID. Only time will tell. And the other interesting is we were able to track the age. As you can see, we are an aging parish. The next was, engaging ministries, understanding what do they need that they don't have, and to help enable them to grow. And so we sent questionnaires out to all the ministries. We received 29 responses back. That's about a 2 or 3 page response sheet. And then we followed up with 12 in-person meetings. You can see all these ministries that we've met with. We had a good. And we took all that information, we compiled it to a big list of all their needs. Granted, there are some wants, there are some dreams, but that's what the stage that we are in right now. And then we wanted to see what other comparable sized parishes are doing. So we visited St. Bede the Venerable and Mentor. And down here, what you'll see is this first one is that parish's numbers, parishioners, families, number of seats in the church. The lower one is what we have here. So you can see that right here we have double the amount of families, but we have the same number of church seats. St. Gabriel, again, you look at comparable numbers down here. Families, pretty close. They've got 900 seats versus 600 here. St. John Vianney, they have just about the same number of families, double the capacity in the church. And finally, St. Anselm, a little bit smaller of a parish, but yet they still have a larger church. So what do we take from that? We centered around what is the worship experience that they're offering? And we wanted to compare it to kind of the worship experience that we have here. Number one, their facilities, their church, gathering rooms, administration, all on one floor. All at grade level, right off the parking lot. Again, the worship space, the number of seatings is between 900 and 1,200 for comparable size parish. Now, there's some factors in how, in the future, how we're going to figure out the appropriate number of seats is the number of priests coming out of seminary. You can see, it mentioned that there was, we showed the number of priests in some of these larger ones. They had 3 priests, or we have 2. Some had 3 masses, some had 5 masses in a weekend. But what if that changes? What if you went down to 1 priest here and we just had to do 3 masses in a weekend, or 2 masses? We don't have the capacity right now. Again, something we won't be able to really know for the next 10 years is change in population. And then what affects the size of the church is the proper layout. Proper layout of the pews, where the ministry music goes, how the altar is arranged, ADA access to the altar. All of these churches had either daily mass or adoration chapel. They all had a separate rectory. With the 4 that we looked at, they were separate rectories, but they were still on campus. We know that there are some other parishes where the priest actually has a house off campus somewhere. And administration all on 1 floor and all together. I don't know if you know that besides the 3 floors in the rectory, you've got offices in the Randall house as well. So it doesn't, I mean, the point of collegiality that we want to foster as well. They all had a large gathering room with accessible public toilets right off the gathering room. I don't know if you know that, when you come off of Spring Street or right off the elevator, that gets you right into the sacristies. Right where the priests are preparing for Mass. And constantly being interrupted. And the only bathroom on that level is in the sacristies. So we want to try and separate some of these functions here. So that led to us gathering all this information on the program of needs. And we haven't assigned any sizes to these or size of a church or anything like that. It just tells us some of the things that we need to look at in terms of that worship experience. Hospitality and worship experience. I put Vatican II. Vatican II really didn't say very specific about church design. Came out a little bit later with built of living stones, and then how architects interpreted that. Architects interpreted this as gathering closer around the table. So you see more of a fan-shaped design, and we try not to go more than 15 or 17 rows back from the altar. So we're fully engaged as a parish. So adequate seating, and also in terms of ADA accessible spaces. A lot of times, they take the first row out of a church, and that's where the wheelchairs go. Well, that's not really fair to the person in the wheelchair or their families, but they might want to have different areas within the church to sit. The choir and music ministry, all on the same level as those worshiping. It's about a community worship, not having a presentation of music behind you. Everyone has a large gathering, welcoming space, bride room, which can be used as a parlor, private parlor for conversations, or the library. They all had a separate choir room. Again, private sacristies, facilities separate from the church and the school, and dignified confessionals. Apparently, when you go to confession here, it's like an open book, right? There's very small, no soundproofing. The church basement use we're looking at. We're not suggesting that we're going to move the school cafeteria out of the church basement, but it's a large space and it's not all used for school lunches. But what other things could it be used for? The kitchen needs to be updated, but that's not only for hot lunches, but that could also be for ministry use. Like the Boy Scouts having a pancake breakfast to support their group. And there is space for potential added program space for ministries. And rectory. Obviously, we need some privacy for the priest. Updated living environment. Potential to have suites on the ground level, So if you do have a retired priest, they don't have to go up the stairs to live on campus. Minimal use of stairs and good separation from work and home. Administration needs everything on one floor, everybody together. And Parish Hall, all these places had a Parish Hall. We don't have a Parish Hall. You have a gymnasium, but you can't use it as a Parish Hall. There's no kitchen. It's not nearly as large as you need. Your existing basement would seat about 300, so we're looking at a Parish Hall to seat about 300 to 400 people. A commercial kitchen, upgraded, storage, obviously restrooms, and again, separate from school functions. There's, as Pat would say, that when the school is in that building, nothing else can happen, right? If there are school lunches, you can't have a funeral lunch. And when there's school lunches, people would have to go to use the restroom to come down through school lunch to use a restroom. And miscellaneous needs, these come from the ministry questionnaires. Storage. Everybody needs storage. And meeting rooms. There's got just a handful of meeting rooms on campus. And think about all the ministries that you could be doing and meeting on a regular basis. We do a lot of evangelical churches as well, and they term their buildings as the third place. Right? Number one place is home. Second place is your work. So what do you do when you're not at home and you work? Come to church and have a program. They have spaces, so if there's, the men want to play basketball and the women want to have something, a program, but they've got kids, they've got spaces for kids to go to, so the whole family can come and be on campus. Last thing we'll be looking at is site traffic. And I know you've all witnessed school drop-off and funerals and daily mass and just coming to the offices, how mixed it gets right here at certain times of the day. There's a danger to that, especially having kids on campus. And again, no decisions have been made. That's my second time, Pat, not 5. The last step is hearing from you, and that's going to inform a lot of our decisions coming in the future. Now, next steps. We're going to take all the information that we received from you tonight, we're going to take it back to the committee, and we're going to talk about it and make sure that we address all the issues. Once we have all that information, then we'll start to develop the physical master plan. Now, there's a lot of, I call it three-dimensional tic-tac-toe. It's like, well, if you do this, what happens here? If you do this, well, do we have to take that down? Well, if you take that down, so if we say, take a building down, well, you got to have a place for the priest to live. So does that become phase 1? Or there's a lot of decisions that need to be made, but anything that we do, we're going to do a phased master plan, and we're going to put price tags to it to show you how much this will cost and how long it would take to achieve the master plan. Okay. And we'll be looking at, can we modify that existing church to meet modern liturgical needs? We'll look at that and price it up, and then we'll take a look and say, if we did a new church, this is what it would cost. And we can pro and con each solution. Obviously, money is a big factor in everything that we do. And parishioner feedback. Tonight, you've got cards on the table. You're welcome. If you don't feel comfortable asking questions out loud, please write a question on the card. Committee members will take them and we'll talk about them. And we've set up a special email address, masterplan@sfxmedina.org, so that after tonight, if something pops in your head, you can go onto the website and connect to the email and whip out a quick email that'll get to us. That's all I have tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rick. And as I was standing back, I'm thinking, I got to say a few more things. So I'll try to make this quick while you're writing down your answers. And I also want this to be a dialogue, so you don't have to write down your question. If you want to raise your hand, we want to have a conversation.
That was perfect. Have them write the answers.
That's right, the answer. We're out of here. We'll see you in about a month. I want to thank again, I know Rick presented and he did a very good job, but there's committee members in this room that also really bounced a lot of ideas off of each other. So I want to thank everybody in this room that's in the committee, because we could not have done it without you. And the yin to my yang, Marty, back there. He's detail, I'm not. So that's how the two of us work well together. And it goes well together too. I also want to make a very important point. I might be looking at somebody that did drywall in 1962 to this church, or did something else this church that we want to keep. We have never talked, that I know of any idea where that church goes away, that building goes away. We respect what you did and everything we do from here on in. We're going to respect what you do in the future. And that's how Father started the prayer today, I noticed as well. So thank you also finally for coming. You never know who's going to come here. We had 2 really big rooms, and I would just say, I said it on Sunday, thank God nobody else came because we don't have another meeting room big enough for it. So thanks for taking the time. Let's start with questions again. I'm going to do the Phil Donahue thing. My hair's gray, for those who remember Phil Donahue, so I'm going to run to you as quick as I can with the mic. Don't talk until I get to you, because we want to make sure we record that and get you an answer that's appropriate.
Right, I want someone on that side to ask a question and someone way over here.
Yeah. So who wants to start? Who wants to start the discussion? And that's really what it is.
I noticed when you put the plan up and you even were comparing parishes one to another and the number of families in there. But I still see there's usually a big difference between the number of listed families and the people who are actually active in the parish. And that makes a big difference, I think, in planning how many seats you need, for example, for Sunday Mass or any other thing that you're going to do. It's the real demographics. You know, they used to say at one time in our former parish, yeah, we listed 4,000 families, but only 400 envelopes were typically used on a Sunday. And that kind of told a story as to how many people are really active in the parish.
You brought up a point that we spent how long working on. This did not go unnoticed. We looked at the demographics about 100 Ways to Sunday. The staff at St. Francis were sick of Rick and me calling up going, let's pressure test that number. Let's make sure that's the real number. Are we talking about existing families? Are we talking about lives? Are we talking about people that wrote down their age, the ones who didn't write down their age? What about Mass? Did we look at the ones from the Usher report, or did we look at the October Mass report that went to the diocese? I mean, we looked at this 100 Ways to Sunday, and I still can't tell you, to your point, that I have 100% accuracy in those numbers, but at some point you've got to land on a number and say, that's the number we're going with. And I feel comfortable enough talking to Marty and to Rick and everybody in the committee that we got as best as we could at the number. But it's a very good point. I don't want to, let it go to waste.
It's something that we're actively continuing to discuss. So you have a handful of parishioners and number of households. And so how many of those parishioners are in those households? Like you might have 4 kids here, right, at school. So that comes into a household. But that also means that we're showing an opportunity that maybe there's something that's not engaging those parishioners who aren't coming to church, right? Is it the facilities at the church? Is it, I don't have to climb up those stairs in the winter just to go to church. Or I feel strange walking in front of the church to get to my seat. Or I feel and with COVID, we're still kind of shaking out how people are going to react to, being in a church. How full are we going to make it? Are you comfortable sitting shoulder to shoulder in a full church nowadays, or do you want to have a little bit more space? And you feel a little bit more comfortable, it means you have a little bit more of a bigger church. That doesn't mean that we can't design a church that has inherent growth into it. That we don't have to put in 1,000 pews. We can design it in so that we put 800 pews, and as you grow, you can add a pew. But that is a concern, and that's why we started looking at other parishes to see what the comparisons are, to see what they're doing versus what maybe what is going to inform on what we do.
Yeah. By the way, thanks for kicking us off. It did go from side to side. Thank you, Rick.
To your point, I think everyone here is very familiar with Holy Martyrs Church. And there is, in this day and age, with all of the germ fear and et cetera, people need to feel that they can have a space to themselves. Whether it's to, if somebody's doing the least cough, they recoil. Holy Martyrs strikes me because it incorporates a particular sanctuary size, but because it opens up with doors on the outside, Easter, Christmas, overflow, pandemic, spacing, you name it, it goes out into a big common space, and bathrooms are out there. People can run with kids, you know, I mean, we don't have a cry room or anything, and maybe that's holding some people back too. But that openness is very inviting, and that might bring people back.
The one thing we spoke a lot about was gathering space, right? We try. We have that little hall before you get to the front of the church, right? But it's not what you're talking about. It's not that gathering space that people can overflow into, where you can have conversations in the wintertime, inside. So I very well noted in all the churches that we saw as well. Any other points on that?
Mine is indirectly that. Excuse me. If you look at the configuration of the church that we have right now, it's got a sidewalk and a street on one side and the rectory on the other side. So there's really no elbow room there for, you know, growing, unless, again, you talked about take the rectory down and put it somewhere else and build it on another part of the property. But there's no room to widen or create spaces just because of the surroundings.
It does pose a challenge, but I promise to look at it, you know, as an option. And one thing that we're not going to be able to get away from, even if we're able to expand the sanctuary and reorient, it's still getting up there. It's still going to be a challenge.
I will tell you, my favorite show is state one channel is HGTV. So, like, I was Joanna and that was Chip. I would have ideas and I'd throw it off of him and say, hey, listen, how about this? And the architect or him would tell me, yeah, good idea, but we're trying everything was my point, right? We're trying to look at every possible way. So.
Getting filthy sitting this far back. You did the comparison of the families and the seats, but did you do a comparison of the percentage of parishioners that actually attend Mass on a regular basis? And is our percentage lower or higher, about the same as everybody else? I would think if it was lower, that would tell us a lot about the facilities.
Ours would be lower. So Lake County is probably the highest in the Diocese of Cleveland as you come. So Lake County is probably the highest attendance, maybe 22%. Coming down this way, you're getting 17, 15. If you look at our numbers, you're back to your question about 600 envelopes or automatic gifts each week or month. But you think of the people that only come at Christmas and Easter, and where are they at? The PAC. So, but yeah, to your point, I think that people tell me they go to Holy Martyrs because they have arms on the chairs, the elderly, and they can push themselves up. We don't, our place you have to yank the pew in front of you to get up. And, you know, restrooms too, like, it's a real struggle if anybody's in a wheelchair to use our facilities because you have to go downstairs and it's just a mess. So people have shared, or they feel bad bringing their kids, screaming kids in the church. And I said, I have a speaker rack out front for you, you know, so yeah, there's a lot of reasons that people have stayed away, and some have said that.
Great question, and I heard you and I agree. Bring your kids to church, right?
Yeah.
What other questions do you have? I should have stayed back then.
I understand about modernizing the church and that it needs to be somewhat updated. But again, this is Medina. I've been a parishioner here for close to 40 years. This matches our town. This is home. When you go into, say, Ambrose, it doesn't feel like home. It's all glitz and glamour, and it's new and it's nice, but it's not home. This is Medina. This is home. And are we going to keep that kind of feeling here? Because I think if we lose that, we're going to lose a lot of people. Because again, we are, I walk in that church and I'm at home. This is my home.
Thank you so much. And first of all, thank you for your passion. I can truly see the passion. and how important this is, and that's why I started it by saying whatever we do, we're gonna do it, and so did Rick. With everybody's thoughts listened to, right? These other things you have to think about is, I hope I'm not speaking out of school, but 10 o'clock mass, somebody up in the choir loft had a little bit of an incident and, fell over. God forbid she could get down. God forbid she couldn't, right? So how do we make it that we still home, very well taken, and still make it accessible for everybody that needs to be accessible for and engaging for, but I do want to get your point.
Right, but if you notice when I was introducing my firm, all the different churches, and they all have a different personality. I don't come with a preconceived notion or an idea here. I design for the parish and the community that I'm in. So none of my buildings will be, I'm not going to say, I have the same building here, the same building here, I'm going to force it on you because I know it works. That's not how that will work together.
I've talked to people who come into our church and say, this looks like a Presbyterian church. This doesn't look like a Catholic church. Where are the saints? And I mean, it is plain, it's my home. And I don't look at the church as the building per se. But there are a lot of people that I have talked to that said, I'm going to one of the older churches in Akron because it looks like a church.
I think the point's taken, it's a very good one, right? I mean, let's say we decide to build whatever we decide. I don't think Rick's going by himself in a room and building that church, right? I think it's going to be all of us that decide how to make it look like a good Presbyterian church. No, like a good, like a good Catholic church and have all the things that make it feel a little bit more like home. Any other? Boy, this is like the first time over on this side for a long time.
Thanks, Pat. So the estimates for the church itself, I think you said were about $300,000 over the next 5 to 10 years or so on. So it's been a while, probably pre-pandemic. I haven't been in the kitchen in a while, but the last time I was there, there were braces and sawn just holding up that side of the church. So I guess that's one thing I didn't see on your list is what are you looking at in terms of just if that's been taken care of, I don't know. But I think one of the things that growing up in a Catholic parish from the time I was a little kid is always about, my parents joke about the fact that they have better funeral masses or funeral brunches than the Lutherans do down the street. It's almost like a competition, and we don't really have that capacity right now, and some of it is because the kitchen equipment has been stripped away over the years. But I guess that's one of the questions that we talk about, bringing people together, right? And that's an opportunity to bring people together, whether it's funerals, whether it's baptisms, whatever, and we don't really have the capacity. So that's one of the questions I would have.
Rick, I think you saw the basement kitchen, so that's perfect, right?
It's functional. Right. It's not great, but there's other issues with funeral lunches. There's a school lunch, it's taking precedence. So,
yeah, so I can speak to it.
Yeah.
So in terms of funeral luncheons, this room was built with the promise of funeral luncheons until parents got hypersensitive about use of restrooms. So then, I think it was one day, a kid out front smoking a cigarette, he's goth, all black and black fingernails, and it sent the parents in the school over the edge. And then that was all before school shootings, and so now we only really have a funeral luncheon on Saturday because of restroom facilities. And the only ones who really do use this space are the seniors, and the seniors, when they meet once a month, they use the one-seater toilet in the office. Other than that, this room is very off limits because of the school day for security reasons. So.
My top thought or comment was just, from I think we're looking at, and I think you guys have looked at it. It's not just the church, I think it's really a campus-wide type assessment, right? And so, hopefully, we're going to look at, what's the, why are people coming to Mass? That's one issue. Or why they're not coming to Mass, maybe that's one issue, right? And so to have that for what it is, right? people, we're Catholic, we come to Mass because it's Mass, right? And so are there things physically that restrict that? Possibly, right? I don't know that it's, the reason it's 10% or 20% or whatever it is, right? I think there's other things going on, but I think that has to be addressed as one issue. But in the entirety is how do you look at the whole campus in a way to really develop the other stuff, right? The side things that matter. And I think you hit some of the stuff on the head. Does it make sense to have the kitchen in the basement of the church? Or would a separate area be, if it's possible, would that type of situation be better, right? Mass is Mass, that's the centerpiece for Mass, right? If you can use it for other things, that's great, but I think that's hopefully, the plan that you guys have come up with, or not come up with, but the process. And I think, when we're looking at church, going away, or I think hopefully that it's not necessarily, well, we're just going to bulldoze the church or something like that, so that we can have extra other space, right? If something happens, so.
Now, I think Rick called it three-dimensional chess, and it is very much like that. Everything we do, it affects something else. And by the way, I'm not saying, once we make do whatever we do to the worship space, that the clouds go away, the sun comes down, and we get 100% attendance. God, that would be wonderful. But I don't think we're there. I think there's other things going on too. But, Danita, I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, but I always call the school the virus, right? Because wherever the virus goes, nobody else can. So if the kids go into the basement, nobody can go into the basement, right? So to your point, you got to think of everything going on. What do we do with St. Vincent de Paul? I met with them, about a month and a half ago, and they said, Mark, you got to take them down to the pantry. So I went down to the pantry, and it was hard for me to walk in the pantry because we could hardly fit ourselves in the pantry, let alone bring people to serve in the pantry. So to your point, very well, it's not the church itself. It's everything. It's how do we do our ministry? How do we do our storage? How do we do our administration? What if priests get smaller and we reduce the amount of masses? How do we take, there's a lot of other things going on.
I'm close by.
Wow, thank you.
I've been a parishioner here for close to 50 years, maybe more than that, I don't know. But I am watching this, presentation. It tells me that we need change. It's time for change, and it's time to accommodate people that have issues with certain things. We need to. I think maybe we'll draw more people into the church, attending Mass maybe, if things were a little easier to get to, the stairs for one. And the older I get, the more I'm aware of that. And I'm in the choir, and I know those steps become a little harder each year. And, we need to accommodate people. And I think it's time for change. I think everything you're doing is wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'll say real quick, I never want to do change in my house. My wife will look at the living room and say, it looks just fine. And she always wants change. So I agree, we need change every once in a while. We'll go to Matt and we'll get you.
Just to piggyback a little bit with what he was getting at, I think is, we have a bigger problem with the capital C church, getting the younger people here. And I don't think it's a facilities problem. We're the ones that can make it up the stairs okay. Obviously there's a lot of grossly needs that have to be done for the people that are here. You're preaching to the choir, as they say, but if you look around the room, who is here in the demographic? And the ones that want this change will be the ones paying for it, not the younger ones, because they're not here.
That's not an unusual situation. You see that parish after parish, and take it to the older generation to gift the younger generation something, just like the previous generation gifted you this church. It's the end of life. What else can we do with it?
But no, my heart goes out because I agree with you 100%, right? We can do so much with the facilities, but God, I pray every day that it's not going to be like a gym where, nobody goes to the gym and then everybody makes money. We want those pews full, and any way you can do that is helpful. So.
I'll make this a twofer tonight, maybe go to confession. that perhaps maybe during some long homilies, I won't mention names, that I play an architect sitting there in church and saying, well, we took this wall out, we moved this. I guess I'm curious, and I know you don't want to say anything definitively. I'm no architect, but are these even, I know we're geographically, we can't go in certain directions, and we could maybe build a parking lot, but can you even blow out sides of that church with the way it's designed? I know nothing about our beams and what they have up there. I know they're a little, be painted, but I mean, could you even be creative and blow out a side and build where the rectory is, go front, go back? I mean, will these walls even, and we have a tunnel. I mean, most people may not know, there's a tunnel over there too. You can go from the school over into the basement. I mean, there's a lot of weird things. I just wonder, could you even physically expand that footprint realistically?
We can perform surgery, for sure, but we are hampered on two sides. The other issue is that the altar that's raised up is a structural slab. So if we wanted to reorient that church, we have to figure out what to do with that raised platform. Now, we could cut it out and lower it, but how much money are we willing to pay to do stuff like that, and yet still have some of the issues of having to get up there? I mean, we can create a nice welcoming place, a nice stairway and elevator to get people up, and I guess at the end of the day, we're going to have two plans, and we're going to say which one feels better for and cost. Do we want to spend $4 million doing renovations to that, or do we want to spend $5 million on a new church? I'm not saying that's what it's costing. I'm just saying we're going to have those choices to make and discuss.
Did you have a two-parter?
No, this is my confession. I think I made it.
Oh, all right.
I thought as a good reporter you were going to try to get an extra question in. Did anybody else have a question?
If you wanted an example, St. Rita's in Solon was my father's very first church. Same structure. He took out the center of the church and blew it out and created arms that went out and reoriented the church. So it is possible.
I have the pleasure of serving on parish council. We've had a chance to look at the SWOT analysis, which is looking at every part of what we've talked about tonight. And all 5 of my kids are gone, so they're making grandchildren for me. But I have to tell you, I am really amazed at how much needs to be done here. If you really look at each of these little things in detail. I kid Father Tony all the time. The first when I came here, I thought he only worked on Sundays, but I found out that he does a lot of things, as do all the people in this room. The people in this room are the believers who serve on a lot of ministries, not just one. And that's why they're here tonight. And I think that if we as church in this room can get out and get to those people who are not in this room, I think we could really make a difference. And the other part that I believe, we've got Father John now, who is, I think that, along with Father Tony, who's always been the best, but now that we have Father John, these two men deserve a place to live that's, a quiet place, a place where they can go and reflect and pray. And I can't even imagine living at my office in my business days. That just doesn't feel right. And I think that needs to be a top priority for all of us. So, to all of you, thank you.
Right. Everyone in the last 2 years have had to work from home.
I always feel guilty when I do mass in your living room. Well, not mass, Jesus, I don't make myself a priest. When I do meetings in your living room, I always feel guilty, like, doesn't he have to go to bed soon, or shouldn't he be doing something here? But it's a very good point.
Come on, the football game's on.
I'm just curious how the rental properties along the side, it's prime real estate, as my sister would say, how, if at all, would that factor into this complete campus redo? That's question one. And how much is a tear down? Because it seems to me like the whole middle section between the church and the school needs to be torn down and redone, or relocated, and then you'd have space there. But then that doesn't address the traffic issue. So, you know, good luck with your chess. You know, Star Trek, they play multi-level chess.
I'm gonna let Father answer the apartment or this real estate issue.
So back when I got here and everybody had 2 mortgages and I stopped paying tuition and supporting the offertory, I hired an architect, Cunningham and Associates to replat. Because I thought, we got all these houses I could sell, right? Until I found out we were in the transitional overlay district, which means you have a buffer from your nearest property owner that will not allow you to develop it. So you can't build on it. So when I found out there's 100-foot buffers off the back of those houses, useless to me to sell them. So at this point we've not sold anything, because that way the entire space is developable, whether or not you tear down houses or whatever. It cost $6,000 to tear down the house that Marina was living in, FYI. It's probably more now, but Adam?
Yeah, one thing, I think what happened here has happened, we all know somebody's house that, they started out with 1 kid, then they had 4 kids, and they had 7 kids, right? And so the house went from, the cabin to this kind of monstrosity of Frankenstein where things were added over time. And that's awesome, in many ways, that's the old homestead, right? And it's a wonderful thing. But if you have 7 kids and you're moving to a new place, you're gonna design something that's different. And I think, some of the foresight, I think, that Father Hollis had in buying some of those houses, right? I don't think that foresight was necessarily for flipping the house and making money on it. It was to build the campus and the ministry in Medina. And so, if we can get back to doing things like, maybe having, fish fries on Friday, because we have a commercial kitchen that we can use, and gather people in there to have outreach to the community, that probably makes sense to utilize some of that area. Now, green space is great too, but I think that's the whole process is to...
So those backyards came all the way to the playground. So those lots, right? So now we have buildable space out there. There's plenty of room for doing something. So, but you're right, this place has been added on to many, many times. And now's the time to think, okay, we just want to add one more thing. How do we clean this up so you can find the front door, so you can go to meetings, the office staff can work together and eat together, and how can we have meeting space that's adequate, for the ministries that we need. When the poor come to have assistance, they don't sit out there in the bread line, that kind of thing. How do we do things with a more dignified kind of approach?
Let's do 1 or 2 more. I want to be, I want to watch your time too. But let's do 1 or 2 more and then we'll.
I'm just curious if you looked at parking in this. I don't think I heard you mention that. And, depending with masses, with COVID and everything, well, it wasn't a big problem, but people now, park across the street on Smith, they park in, different offices on Sunday, because I know we've been stuck in the parking lot, not able to get out, and someone was sick, and we really needed to get out. So, just parking.
Yeah, I hope you got out at some point. That's a horrible place to be. And let me add to that. Now we're due some mass by 1. Same amount of people going to mass, but 1 less mass. And I didn't even think about it. That's why we have this guy. And he thought about it for quite a bit.
Well, there's a couple things that will come into play during design. One is zoning codes. If we do a new church, we got to meet the current zoning codes. That's typically one car space for every 4 seats in the church, which is a little crazy. I mean, when's the last time you saw a family of 4 get out of a car? Usually it's 2 people, and if a couple's involved at church, the usher might come earlier than. So there's a lot, but we have to make sure that we have enough parking based on the seating in the church. So once we pick the number of seats in the church, then everything kind of falls out of that.
Our biggest crunch, is a school day, and we have a funeral, a big funeral. That's when we're maxed out. I got the teachers parking in the Randall house and on the lawn so that we can make room for the funeral. That's when we're the most maxed out. And the end of the school day, pickup. We are maxed out. So not even for church on Sunday, we haven't maxed out since COVID. But I used to walk around and count how many cars were parked on the lawn, and And I wish I would have only put in 54 spaces, I wish I would have put 70 out there when we put that new parking lot, but at the time, I didn't think we need that much. But we do need curbs, we do need a flow of traffic, you know.
I just wanted to ask you, when you came here, we were done with the stacked parking. Remember
No, when I
how
came
you
here,
did
we
that?
stack parked, and I said,
They
I would
still
never come to
stack
church here.
park.
Because you get trapped. I had people yelling at me after mass, like, well, sell your Porsche and hock some money my way. This is a no-brainer. But no, I remember when we did inline parking, I thought, this is insane. Especially if you had an emergency or whatever. And then especially on donut Sundays when everybody would go downstairs, and then people would be yelling at me. So that was one of the first priorities, like no parking, so I don't get yelled at on Sunday morning for something I don't need to be yelled at. Wow.
There's another question over here somewhere.
I just want to say that goes back to the whole concept of hospitality. Right? When I come here, am I going to be able to park here? Right now, we park here, how close can I park? If I got to park a half mile away, what's going to be easier? Pull in, not find anything, and pull out and feel bad that I didn't come fast.
I just wondered if there's any type of loose timeline. I know you're just at the talking stages right now, but is there any sense of timeline? Because as you stated, some things have like a 10-year thing before they go and more money's going to have to be put into them. So I just wondered if there was...
I'm going to let Father and Rick answer that because they know the timeline better than me, and I have no power. So all I can say is I think I'll be busy for the next foreseeable future working on the next stages of this. But if you want to, go ahead.
After this town hall meeting, we're going to meet back in committee in the next couple of weeks, discern everything that's been said, and then I'm going to start putting pen to paper. And we think that come early spring, I'm going to be coming back in front of you and presenting what we're thinking about. There may be an interim town hall meeting where I'm showing multiple ideas. The last thing I want to do is come in here and we call them ta-da Sundays. It's like, well, here it is, ta-da, do you like it or not? I'd rather have an interim meeting with everyone and let people follow the process and get input before you have that ta-da Sunday.
Well,
and then after that's done, we're going to have meetings with the diocese. The bishop, I'm sure, is going to have something to say about this. We have financing to look at. And just so you know, in terms of starting a project in the diocese, you've got to have 100% pledged and 50% in the bank before you can even put a shovel in the ground.
I just have a quick one. Do we know what, well, I know we know what this acreage is of what the church has here.
Right.
How does that compare to some of those other parishes? Seats in the church was a good number, but I think from a big picture standpoint, right?
Yeah.
What's the acreage here? Do we know versus?
Rick, do you have that? Do you want to go over that? So it's big, and we have nice acreage here. I don't think we're winning for acreage, and the other parishes we went to had pretty nice acreage too, to be honest with you, when I looked at them.
St. Bede's did not have a giant parking lot.
Right, you're right. Yep. Yep.
St. John Vianney was huge.
What?
St. Gabriel's was huge.
Yeah. One is, and I think Father's going to start this next week, is they had a garden that served as a food bank. Right? So there you go. I'm putting that out there now. But I think that is, that's how big some of the spaces were. But we have adequate space for whatever I think we want to do when we look at that. Guys, I want to really end it because I know for some people you're like, I got to get up in the morning. And this is a great discussion. But I want to first thank everybody for this unbelievable good discussion tonight. Thank you so much. It's not ending tonight. What I ask you to do is, if your question wasn't answered, or if you didn't want to ask the question by raising your hand, please write it down on a card. We're capturing all of them. We're putting them all then on the website with the answers, ever so brief if it's a quick one. And then remember that, and I'm not going to ask you to remember it, but that email that was up here, it's also on the website. So you can email, I think it was in the bulletin, yes. So there's many ways to get a hold of us. The last thing we want to do is we don't want to stand with you into the ta-da moment, and we don't want to say that, yeah, you go ahead and talk over there, but we're going to work over here, right? This only works if as a parish we decide this together. So with that, Father, do you want to say closing comments?
Let's pray in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. So, Heavenly Father, on this feast of St. Vincent de Paul, we thank you so very much for the charitable works of our church that have provided for people for many, many centuries. We ask your blessing especially on all Vincentians and all those who are sisters of charity who work with the poorest of the poor. And we ask you to continue to help us to have eyes and ears that are open to those around us and to respond to their needs. And gathering all of our prayers into one, we unite them in the prayer that Christ taught us. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
the Lord be with you. And with your spirit. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Feel free to talk with any of the committee members or yourselves. Thanks. Grab a cookie.
I'm used to doing it. Still go.